Hello, everyone. I'm Livia,
I'm Larissa.
and this is What's in a Film. And today we thought we were gonna talk about an epic. Can it be called an epic?
Well, I
I don't
think it
know.
certainly can. It's quite grand.
Okay. It is grand. Yeah, we're gonna talk about Napoleon.
Napoleon, such
Ooh.
an interesting historical character.
For good and bad.
Mm,
We're gonna discuss it. Let's see what's the conclusion.
exactly. So,
Um,
Livia, do you want to walk us through some fun stats about the film?
Yeah, so directed by the great Ridley Scott, which's done a lot of films, which some I love, some I don't. He's done Alien, which is really nice, Blade Runner, which is a classic. I don't really like it, but it's a classic. Thelma and Louise, I didn't actually remember he directed it, but yeah, Thelma and Louise, great. Gladiator, Robin Hood, both with Russell Crowe. A Good Year, The Martian, House of Gucci, just some of the biggest ones. He has a fine arts background, so he's really known for always inputting some art into cinematography and some of his films. They're always very beautifully done. Um, it was written by David Scarpa, who has worked with Ridley before on All the Money in the World and now in Napoleon. Cinematography was by Dariusz Wolski. He's worked on the Pirates of Caribbean films, The Crow, the classic one from the 90s, Sweeney Todd, which I love. And they worked together, Ridley and Darius, on Prometheus, The Martian, Alien Covenant, All the Money in the World, House of Gucci, and now in Napoleon. The budget
Wow.
for it was $130 million, which I think it would have been more, seeing that it's such a grand film. But yeah, big budget, 130 million. And it made 213 million on the box office. So yeah, success, I guess.
230,
I would have thought was 213,
13. So
one
kind of
three, 213.
doubled, right?
Kind of double. Yeah, success.
Hmm. Hmm. So what's really interesting about Napoleon, Livia, is that at the beginning of the scene where we see Napoleon in Toulouse and he's fighting against the British to take over France again. And obviously, in a way, he is also doing this to better his career because he's trying to work his way up in the ranks. That was
Mhm.
all shot in Malta.
Where you are from?
Yes,
Ah!
most of the film was shot in Malta. So you see these beautiful fortresses and fortified cities, and those are all real. That's a real background. That's not CGI. And I just thought
That's nice.
it was beautiful. The fact that they managed to use, real historical buildings. Of course, there was CGI with explosions and fighting scenes. However, I had a bit of a proud moment. Also,
Oh,
Malta is a very good location to film. We have a very
yeah.
great cash rebate. So there's a 40% cash rebate. And
Wow.
yeah, that means that the money that they spent in Malta, they got some of it back. So that's very helpful in your budget. As a
Oh, yeah.
as a producer, here's one tip for anyone who would like to be a producer. Look at tax credits and cash rebates in different European countries, especially if you can use the country as the country, because it's going to save your budget.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think it's very important for countries like Malta, because Malta is already known in the industry for being great for shooting films. Lots of big Hollywood films are shot in Malta because it's cheaper, because they get tax rebate. Like in the UK, we have many studio complexes, but it's a lot more expensive to shoot a film here than it would have been. It's cheaper to fly the whole crew and cast to a country like Malta, where everything's a bit more compact because it's such a small island. And it's a very clever thing for the government to do as well, with all the cash rebates and stuff.
Yeah, because
Interesting.
they're creating jobs for the local people. Amazing, amazing, talented crew. So yeah, and it's just bringing opportunities, exposing the island, bringing all these actors. I mean, Ridley Scott loves Malta. He shot the first Gladiator there. They've just started up again with the new remake of
The new
Gladiator.
Gladiator.
Yes, so they had started last year, but then there was, there was the strike, so they had to pause on that, and now they've continued. We also have a beautiful film studios. I've used them. I've acted in some films where we use the film studios before. Beautiful water tanks as well. So the infrastructure is there, and our film commissioner really works hard to make sure. What I would love is to see more Maltese talent in films,
Mm.
because sometimes we're not always cast in
Mm-hmm.
speaking roles because they're always cast from abroad, but that's just the way of the system works, right? Like, I just had an audition for a Channel 5 drama, that's all I can say, where I had to
Okay.
audition for a Maltese woman because they're going to be filming in Malta, but the audition came from here, from the UK,
Right.
right? So, it's just the way it works. But yeah, who knows? Maybe eventually,
Who knows?
we can start a little casting agency in Malta to help promote the amazing, amazing. I'm telling you, there's so much talent. It's insane. Anyway,
I believe you.
let's oh, let's get started. Livia, so your thoughts.
Right.
Napoleon, let's go.
I did enjoy Napoleon. Um, I think I might even watch it again at some point. Confess that in the beginning I wasn't really invested, but then from the middle, like from half the film on, then I was really invested. I think it got a little bit more rhythm from the middle onwards. A feeling that I had in the beginning was that at some points it felt more like a romance film, very focused on his love story with Josephine. And then that was kind of moving the history. But it was very much focused on their love story, their romance, which is a big part of the Napoleon kind of psyche. Even when we studied this in school, she is always kind of behind what's happening with him. Um, so I think that took me off the film a little because I was expecting to see lots of battles and lots of history, and then I was watching this film about their romance. But then from the middle on, it kind of shift a little bit, and then I found it a little bit better from there. But I do think it does a good job on portraying Napoleon as kind of this complex man. He was a little bit childish. You can see him throwing tantrums at some scenes. And he was hungry for power. He wanted to be emperor. He wanted to be king. And I think they do a good job at portraying that. One of the final scenes of the film shows this really, really well when he's on his second exile in St. Helena Island. He's just sitting at this table having some sort of breakfast or something. Yeah, these two little girls were playing sword fight, and he says, "What's the capital of France?" And they reply, "Paris." Then he asks the capital of Russia, and they say Petersburg and Moscow before. And he says, "Well, who brought Moscow to the ground?" And the little girl says, "I don't know." He said, "I did." And
Right.
then the other girl says, "Well, I believe the Russians burned it, sir, to get rid of the French." And then he's like, "Oh, who told you that?" And she says, "Well, it's common knowledge." And he just starts throwing grapes at them and tell them to go away. So I found that scene quite amusing and funny. It just shows how he had this hunger for power and this big ego that he would even make up stories. We can't know if this really, really happened, but I think it does a good job of showing kind of his psyche.
Yes, I do agree. He's like, what I loved about this film is that okay, it's a biopic, it's a historical character. However, we're not, there's creative license. So it might have not followed history 100% to the T. However, we have what I believe Scott did was he really managed to portray his character, who Napoleon was, or at least an idea of this Napoleon that we have, because he's always seen as this great conqueror, but then the psyche, as you were saying, behind it, the thought behind it, how he was so greedy and he was just greedy for power, for lust. And the film, and with performance of Joaquin Phoenix, they really managed to bring forward this very epic character. And what I love
Yeah.
about Scott and his directing is that it's like I show, not tell. So as you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
Napoleon had this, I believe he had this grandeur personality, right? Where he would take something that happened like this, but make it this big, right? So even there's the scene where he is fighting against the Austrians because he was
Mm-hmm.
annoyed that they didn't sign the peace treaty. And we're watching their soldiers, the Austrian soldiers, go down into the ice. And we're not actually sure that happened like that, right? But that's
Yeah.
how Napoleon describes it. That's how he makes it out to be. But what Scott did is he showed us what's happening in Napoleon's mind rather
Mind.
than using exposition of him talking about it. But then he
Yeah.
uses it kind of at the end. What I found very interesting was his love story with Josephine. Definitely there was this romantic side, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Definitely.
and I mean, what was your take on that? On his, because we see Napoleon, but we don't know much about Josephine, and it was very interesting the way that they put her in there, and the way that it kind of felt a bit like a love story as well, not just a
Yeah.
historical drama about this warrior of way back
This
when.
conqueror. Yeah.
Sure.
Um, I do think we see a little bit more of her in this film than we have before. And there is one scene that really stuck with me. Um, I can't remember it completely now, but he's kind of, I think when he finds out that she's been cheating and he comes back from Egypt, I think, just because of that, because she hasn't replied the letters, she hasn't written to him. And then he comes back to be like, oh, you're cheating, you're a bitch. Uh, and then the whole scene is constructed to show him as this very violent and possessive man. And then she kind of turns it around at the end. She's like, no, you're going to do as I say. And he
They had
just
a
goes like a puppy, like, okay.
they had a very toxic relationship. They needed
Very,
each
yeah,
other, so she needed him in a moment of despair. She was imprisoned, her husband was killed, she had kids, and she needed to marry someone who had status.
yeah.
And he seemed, I don't
Which
think,
was
yeah, I mean, I
which
don't
was normally what happened back then.
during
Yeah,
those times. I don't think she necessarily was in love with him. But as they got older and they got to know each other more, it became this co-independent relationship where it became very toxic
yeah,
because they manipulated each other and they held a very strong hold. He loved her, he adored her, right?
yeah.
But there eventually you could see that they became friends. And in
Even
fact,
he when he divorces her because he needed an heir and she couldn't give it to him. Um, and he does it maybe not willingly, but that's what he needs to do for France. And I think we can connect it here to a very nice insight that you've had about his love for Josephine, and then at the same
Yes.
time a love story
So
with France.
yeah, because you know so Napoleon was obsessed with Josephine. And again, it fed his ego. He was also obsessed with France, and France turned to Napoleon in a time of despair as well. They needed someone to help them come out of this misery that they were in. So if you look at them, both Josephine and both France turned to Napoleon in times of despair. What did Napoleon
Mhm.
do? He used that to his advantage. He was
Of
greedy.
course.
He manipulated the situation. He took everything into his own stride, into his own control. So there was always this, like, love-hate relationship, because he loved Josephine, he loved France, but he wanted to control them, right? He
Yeah.
didn't allow them to flourish and grow naturally. He wanted to have control over everything. So this is what caused his demise, right? This is what
Yeah.
caused him to ultimately crash and fall apart. And it's very interesting because at the end of the film, Josephine reads a letter, right, with one of the letters. And in a way, it's
Mhm.
kind of reflective. Like, she kind of says, if I had to go back and do things from the start, I wouldn't allow you to take control. I would take
Yeah.
control and I would lead this relationship. And it's kind of the same thing with France. It's like they could
It's
have.
like,
Go on, go on, go on.
finish.
No, tell me, tell me.
It's like, um, because the whole thing with the French Revolution, it's known as the big people revolution, where the people really started and fought for it, for more fraternity and equality. And he didn't let the people have it, because when he took control on the name of the people, he used it for his ego and his power hunger, and he wanted to expand and to control the whole of Europe. So he didn't think of Josephine, and he also didn't think of the people of France. I think it's a very nice parallel that you made there.
Yeah, it's very interesting to, by the way, thank you. But it's very
Uh-huh.
interesting to kind of see that. But what I guess what I would love to finish off is that you mentioned that Ridley Scott has a background in fine arts, and it's very evident in this film because he uses a lot of images that I mean, people who are in fine arts or love art, they're very okay, let me start again because I'm fluffing.
Okay.
Okay. Um, Another topic that I would love to. Oh my God, I'm losing my mind, Livia. Oh
Just
my God.
breathe.
Yes. So Ridley Scott is really a visionary, and as you mentioned, he has a background in fine. We're gonna. I know he. Okay. Ridley Scott is a visionary, right? And you mentioned that he has a background in fine arts, and he does
Yeah.
use a lot of images in his film that are famous paintings of Napoleon, like the coronation, like when he's in Egypt, when he is, yeah, when he's in Egypt with the Pharaoh, and then
Hmm.
when they open up the tomb with the mummy inside. These are all, famous paintings of Napoleon.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was very beautiful the way that Ridley Scott uses these images, basically.
Yeah, yeah. He always tries and input that in his films, which I think is really nice because cinema is art, so why not combine them
Yeah.
together?
Yeah.
And then to kind of finish off this episode, one thing that every time Napoleon comes up, one thing that my husband always says is, "Oh, I have this impression that people talk about Napoleon as this great conqueror and this great revolutionary man, and he fought for the people." And we have this kind of impression that there's this nice aura above him, and we wonder if Hitler is going to be granted the same pardon by time, maybe 300 years from now. What do you think they're going to be talking about? The worst man that ever lived? Because Napoleon was nothing more than just another gruesome dictator
That
that
is
kills all
true.
of these people.
That is true. But I mean, again, I I kind of see your point. However, the camps and I don't know. I think I need to do a bit more research about Napoleon, but definitely, definitely, we haven't seen in enough in history of his dark side because it was evident
Yeah,
in this biopic, and it
yeah,
makes much more of an interesting character basically. But hey, Livia, this is the way the world works. People tend to pick and choose as they please. We see this in religion,
true.
we see this in culture, we see this in class, in society. So yeah, we can say that Hitler had an amazing mind, which he did, but he was mad. He was crazy. He obviously had
Mad,
some
absolutely.
sort of, but Napoleon can be on the same line. Anyway, that is our time. It's up. We really finished off with very heavy on a bang, but we'll be back next month. So tune in and yes, please leave us all of your comments. Bye,
Leave your
Livia.
comments wherever you think about Napoleon, about what we discussed now last. Let us know what you think, and we'll see you next month. Bye.